But first, my brain dump. There's no need to exaggerate the current cost of living crisis. It's scary enough as it is. Just ask any family losing sleep over how to pay their bills or stunned into open-mouthed silence at the supermarket checkout. The cost of food, fuel and essential household products is rocketing around the world. Prices are rising by 9% in the UK alone. The last time inflation was so high was in 1982. So this is the worst financial situation we've faced in 40 years, and a desperately worrying time for millions of people. And when there's economic meltdown like this, we expect those whose job it is to fix it to offer us three things: solutions, common sense and calm. Instead, the Governor of the Bank of England, the most important financier in Britain, is running around like a hysterically hyperbolic headless chicken.
The one that I am going to sound, I guess, rather apocalyptic about is food. Sorry for being apocalyptic for a moment, but that's a major concern.
Have you felt a bit helpless through this period?
Well, yes. I mean, it is very, very, more than uncomfortable. I'm trying to think of a word that's even more severe than that.
Helpless? Helpless? Andrew Bailey, you're the Governor of the Bank of England. It's literally your job to help us, not be helpless. And if the apocalypse is truly upon us, then nothing you do or say matters. That, Governor, is the apocalypse. Literally the end of the world. We'd all be dead. Now, you might think that Bailey and his team are working around the clock in their offices to rescue us, but you would be wrong. We learned today that Bailey is allowing his staff to work from home 4 days a week. Presumably they're all sheltering in their private home bunkers from the impending Armageddon. Bailey also says that everybody else should think and reflect before asking for a pay rise, which is pretty rich coming from him when his salary is £575,000 a year, and when he's managing the economy with all his staff sitting at home on the sofa in their briefs on Zoom. Meanwhile, the former chief economist of the Bank of England says maths should be rebranded because it's frightening. Andy Haldane told The Times it should be called numeracy, which he says is less scary. What is he talking about? Perhaps he took his numeracy lessons like this.
We had 3 bats and one more, Sasha, makes 1, 2, 3, 4 altogether. 4 beautiful beauts. I mean 4 beautiful bats.
That was Count Dracula, get it? Terrifying, huh? But the last thing we need, in all seriousness right now, is a ridiculous debate about whether poor little snowflakes can handle the word mass without going into spontaneous anaphylactic shock. The only thing that's really frightening about the numbers right now, and you haven't got to be Einstein to work this out, is rocketing inflation. The governor and his stay-at-home staff should get serious about a serious situation. Stop waving the white flag of surrender, stop using woefully irresponsible language, and get the hell back to the office. The British monarchy undoubtedly has a lot to answer for if you consider the grand sweep of history. King Henry VIII had what's now known as a highly problematic relationship with women, especially when they were in close proximity to a guillotine. His daughter Queen Mary was a big fan of burning Protestants in front of large crowds, which is all now frowned upon. And don't even get me started on King George III, without whose madness and incompetence I would almost certainly be addressing you now as the King of the United States of America. The truth is that Britain's had kings and queens for about 1,200 years. And as with US presidents, some have been dumb, mean, malevolent, or useless. Others, including the current Queen, have been magnificent. Similarly, the British Empire was responsible for very good things and some very bad things. But they all happened in the past, a long time ago. Different rules, different rulers, a different age. That's how history tends to work. None of it has got anything to do with today's royal family. But today, sadly, every royal tour is now dominated by a shrieking chorus of demands from social justice stirrers for them to issue endless apologies for the past. The latest target is Prince Charles, who's visiting Canada to mark the Queen's Platinum Jubilee.
We must find new ways to come to terms with the darker and more difficult aspects of the past, acknowledging, reconciling, and striving to do better. It is a process that starts with listening.
It is, but once you start apologising, Your Royal Highness, trust me on this, it'll never stop. The royals faced demands from rights groups in Canada to formally apologise for the way Indigenous people were treated during the Age of Empire. This after the Earl and Countess of Wessex faced protests over Britain's historic links to slavery on a visit to the Grenadines. And the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge were met with demands for reparations in Jamaica. Now look, it's beyond question that the British Empire committed atrocities by the enlightened standards of today's world. Just as it is beyond question that there are many things we can be ashamed of in our past. But there are also many reasons why we should be extremely proud to be British. We're a great country that's done many great things. Yet all of the good stuff is being forgotten as the royals embark on what now seems to be an endless, grovelling apology tour for the behaviour of ancestors. Well, I've got an apology, and it's this. I'm sorry, but I'm finding these constant apologies by the royals increasingly irksome. Obesity has reached epidemic proportions globally, with at least 2.8 million people dying because of it each year. More than half of young American adults are either overweight or obese. In England and Scotland, obesity is now a bigger cause of death than smoking. But rather than tackle this problem head-on with the action that's urgently required, woke warriors want health professionals to ease off on the global fat fight because, you've guessed it, it's racist. The University of Illinois Chicago School of Public Health says weight stigma is discrimination or stereotyping based on a person's weight and is one of the last types of discrimination still condoned and carried out by public health and medical experts. This report says focus on body size is rooted in racism dating back to Charles Darwin, and stigmatising words like obesity should be dropped for terms like people in larger bodies. For the love of God, the people being lectured about all this are doctors, highly educated medical professionals. They should be allowed to get on with their jobs without worrying about upsetting people who need to lose weight. And by the way, here's a pro tip. If you do want to lose weight, and take it from me, someone who's carrying a bit of excess timber, the way to do it is to do a bit more exercise and stick with a little less food and alcohol down your gullet. That normally tends to work. The idea it's now deemed racist to criticise morbid obesity is yet another symptom of the woke virus's grip on common sense. We now know that higher mortality rates from COVID-19 in the black community were linked to obesity. When we tell the medics who are mobilised in the fight on fat to stand down because it's racist, we're actually putting our minority communities at greater risk of poor health and death. And that, ironically, is racism. Professional footballers are among the most lavishly paid athletes in the world. Top players can earn millions every month for kicking a ball around, which obviously sounds ridiculous in an economic crisis, but their salaries are driven by market force. They get paid a lot of money because they're the best at what they do, and they make a lot of money for their teams. And the same simple economic calculation should apply to men and women. That's why I'm in total agreement today with the groundbreaking decision by the US Soccer Federation, not with their decision to call themselves Soccer Federation. It's football, but their decision to pay its women team the same amount it pays the men. US women have fought hard for equal pay for years, and here's their victorious captain today.
I am feeling extreme pride, and to be able to say finally equal pay for equal work feels very, very good.
Well, she should. She's earned it. They all have. The US women's football team is a ruthless winning machine. Skilled, strong, resilient champions. They've won 4 World Cups, 4 Olympic golds. Compare that with the US men's team, which has won absolutely nothing and is about as entertaining to watch as a Meghan Markle podcast. It's not realistic right now for all female sports teams or individual sports women to earn the same as male counterparts. It depends on the sport, the level of success, their star power, and particularly on revenue streams from crowds and television. But in this case, it's a no-brainer. The US women's team may be very smug and annoying, but honestly, they've got every right to be. They're more successful than the US men's team by far. They get bigger crowds, just as many sponsors, and actually much bigger stars. If anything, they should be paid more than the men.